right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. And I guess technically right now it is the off season. High school basketball is done, college basketball is done, so technically it's the off season. But basketball doesn't really stop. And my guest tonight, I'm guessing this is probably like his end season. He's probably in it right now, grinding, getting after it with the people he works with. And my guest tonight, Dylan Goodman, one of the guys at the forefront of the basketball training scene here in Maine. Operates down there in the Portland area. Dylan, what's good, man? How you doing tonight?
Hey, man, I'm awesome. Thank you for having me on, bro.
Absolutely. So, yeah, my first question, like right now, you're probably jumping into it, right? I'm guessing you work with kids and everyone year round, but now that the high school season's done, although AAU's in full swing too, but I'm guessing right now you're getting into it with a lot of people right now.
Yeah, man. Definitely. I had a pretty decent in-season training too. I had a lot of my clients still work with me through the season, which was awesome. But yeah, man, spring is always that kind of launching pad for the summer. Summer's always big. So yeah, man, we're right back at it.
So now that the season's done, and you said you work with a lot of them during the season as well, like how much are you paying attention to them during the year, kind of tracking where they're at, and then just getting a game plan? And you mentioned jumping into it with spring. You're kind of just getting back into it. Like, do you follow everything going on during the season, formulate a game plan, and then attack it right now that it's considered the off season?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on what kind of season we're in. Depends on what kind of training we're doing. I'm a big fan of game film, so I watch. Obviously, this year being a COVID season, wasn't able to go to games, but being able to watch the live stream tube and watch the replays and stuff like that was actually great because I actually had more content, more things to watch this year than in years past because a lot of teams don't make it readily available to everybody. So that was actually really nice, a nice change of pace this year. So I actually got, a lot more homework to do, but it was good because I think we're going to get a lot more out of it this spring and this summer. So yeah, it was definitely a little different, but in some ways it was helpful.
And then the other big thing that happened for you this past winter is you got your own space, right? So you got your own gym up and running. So talk to me about that. I mean, how long has that been in the works? And then how nice is that now just to have your own space? Because I'm guessing that's probably the most difficult thing, or it was the most difficult thing prior, right? Just finding gym space to get these kids in. But yeah, tell me the whole process and background behind getting your own space that you can call yours.
Yeah, man. Well, obviously, COVID obviously blindsided everybody. It made it really tough right at the beginning of everything back in March of the prior year when everything just shut down. Like I said, it was kind of blindsided, and I was out of work for probably about 8 months. Then I was able to get back to work for a couple of weeks and everything lightened up, and then everything got shut down again. So it was at the point where, it was kind of a make or break decision for me because I knew even if they did lighten everything up, trying to rent gym space was going to be incredibly tough, at least down here where, the cases were super heavy still. And really most gyms around are like schools and stuff aren't renting out. So it was really a make or break decision. And it's something I've always, when I started training, it was a goal of mine. Like I told myself, when I got into this, that I was eventually going to have my own space. Definitely came a lot quicker than I thought, and everything kind of came full circle really fast. But I just made the jump, and I bet on myself, and I pulled together everything that I had, and I just did it, and I bet on myself. All the clients love it. Everybody who's came through has loved it. It's definitely given me the freedom to do what I want to do the way that I want to do it. So absolutely no regrets. And I'm only a couple months into it right now. I unofficially opened in January. And so now here we are, getting into May where now we're getting into the heavy lifting. So I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. And I'm guessing you got a bunch of things that you can now do in your own space and some stuff you got coming up, which we'll get into towards the end of this. But you talked about when you got into this whole training thing, the goal was to one day have a gym you have now. But I want to know how you actually got to this point. So let's go back. So Portland, born and raised, right? You're a Portland boy.
Yeah. Yeah, man, born and raised in Portland. I actually ended up playing at Portland. I went to Portland High School, played 4 years there, and then was lucky enough to only get one call. Never honestly was not very good throughout high school. And then, I just had one coach at Thomas, Coach Maines, who works at Coney now. I believe he's a coach over there.
Yeah.
He gave me a call and wanted me to try out. And I worked that summer, just like the summers before, because like I said, I wasn't very good. So I worked real hard every single year, just elevating myself. And that's kind of where this came about was, I fell in love with training. Like I just loved being in the gym. I just loved working and watching my skills develop. And I brought that to my teammates too. That was a big thing, is we ended up in the gym together, and that's kind of where it all started. I saw my progress, and I just wish that I had somebody who could walk me through it at a younger age. And that's kind of how this all came about.
So you mentioned how you didn't really get to into the training portion until you got to college, but played all throughout high school and stuff like that. So growing up in the Portland area, were you more the type to just go find a run, just play wherever you can? Was that kind of yeah? Well, where were you running at in Portland
all
growing
street
up?
ball stuff, all playground, pick up. Even as a kid, I remember just the neighborhoods that we grew up in. Some of them didn't have the 10-foot hoops; they only had the 8-foot hoops. So we're out there jumping and dunking on each other, and that was the fun part of the game. I kind of miss some of that aspect of it. I feel like that's not too much like today's crowd is. I don't see that too much. But I think this summer, because people miss ball so much, I think you're going to see a lot of people outside and bringing some of that culture back. So I'm really excited for that too.
So Portland's always been just a great area of a lot of talent. You got all these big schools, all these big surrounding towns. It's just, there's no shortage of talent. So like, who were some of the kids that you came up with in that time frame that were really good in Portland at the time?
Oh man, well, I mean, in my class, or just before me, like I said, I remember watching guys like Keegan Highland and Indiana Faithful too. Those are some of the guys that kind of like set the benchmark for some of the younger players. But as I was finishing up, we had Javon come through. We had Peter Donato come through. This was at Portland High. I'd be kicking myself too if I didn't mention my brother Mike Herrick. Man, me and him, we grew up together, and he was a killer basketball player, man. He was really, really good, and we hooped all the time. So I owe a lot of my competitiveness to him, and a lot of those Bulldog brothers that I got too. Matt McGinnis, he runs the AAU program, Maine Sting now too. I came up with him too. But these are just some of the teammates that I played with.
And talking Portland and talking Thomas hoops here, I got to ask you, because this guy's probably a little bit before you, but Andrew Duncanson, right? He's a Portland guy and went to Thomas, right? Yeah, well, did you play with him, or was he before you?
Yes, no, he was definitely before me. But no, it was really cool because, I got to go to obviously a couple camps and a couple preseason stuff where he would come in and he would work out with us every once in a while in high school. And then obviously, yeah, I saw him go to Thomas, and he was like the first person that I connected with when I got up there. And I was in the gym every day, and I would see him there too. He was done; he had already finished up.
Yeah.
But he was helping out the coaching staff and stuff like that. So it was really cool to connect with him and kind of bridge that gap between Portland and Thomas.
Good dude too. I worked a summer camp with him way back in the day, and just a really good dude to be around, and just a bulldog on the court too. Like the mascot is fitting. That's kind of how he was.
For sure, man. No, he's a good dude.
So tell me about Thomas here. I think you're my first, maybe the second Thomas person I had. So in Waterville, what was that culture like? You mentioned Coach Maines was there when you were there. Yeah. So what was the program like under his direction?
Man, the program was fun because it was super fast paced. So it was way different than high school. And I think that was really my biggest learning curve was, high school, obviously we don't have shot clocks. And everything is like at Portland, we kind of pressed, playing fast pace. But definitely like the half court sets, because people would zone up and do, full court presses and things like that. So obviously it was more of a half court thing. But man, when we got to college, it was just like, it was push, it was run and gun. It was, get shots up within the first, 14 seconds. And, we were averaging some good points per game. I think we were up, maybe in the 90s. per game. But we had an okay season that first year. We were about 500. We ended up getting whooped by Husson to end it, which kind of sucked. But, that was the intro to me as a freshman, to see some of this and see some of these guys and how they prepare. It was a big change for me because I had never been around, that type of program before. Just college and high school is just a different monster. So
I'm drawing a blank right now too, and I'm really upset at myself. But what's the conference called that you guys all play in? Hudson Thomas, Farmers. What's the conference name?
Oh, that's oh man, now you put me on the spot.
You're drawing a blank too right now.
God, it's not the I keep wanting to say the Nest. It's not the Nest. What the hell is it?
It might be the NESCAC.
No, it's oh man.
I'm gonna look it up. I gotta look it up now.
That's what I'm doing. I got my phone out. I'm like looking it up. It's not the. Is it the NESCAC? No, it's not the NESCAC.
The North Athletic Conference. Is it just the NAC? The NAC?
NAC. Thank you. That's what it is.
Right.
I knew it was something like that. NAC. Right. Yes, exactly right.
Talk about NAC hoops because everyone who kind of comes up, it's always I want to go play Division I basketball. Yeah. They don't really realize like how good D2, like D3 hoops, like here in Maine, like the NAC. Yeah. Talk to me about NAC basketball because as I mentioned, some of the schools in that conference, Farmington, you got Husson, you got you guys. It's a great conference. So what do you remember most about your time in those NAC battles, but just Division III basketball in general? Because I'm guessing you guys traveled to and played some other good teams all throughout New England.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. We had some good travels. But yeah, I mean, I guess the conference is definitely good. It's competitive. I like it because it is kind of still in that like high school atmosphere where like you get those rivalries. Yeah. It's kind of like the crosstown rivals. Even like with Colby, like we went across, we played Colby. I know they're in a different conference, but even things like that. Hudson always big too. But I think the biggest thing is, you mentioned like all these players wanting to play D1 and stuff like that. I think the biggest thing to understand, at least that I noticed when playing Division III, is these guys can hoop. They just didn't, whether it was they didn't get the grades or they didn't get the whatever it was to go play or just didn't get offers. Like it doesn't mean they can't hoop and they can't play. Like some of these guys are serious.
Yeah, and you mentioned the rivalries and stuff like that. So I'm guessing when you were there, like you guys won, like you mentioned losing to Hudson freshman year, and that sucked. So I'm guessing like was Hudson that team you guys were always trying to beat?
Yeah, at least like I said, I played there for 2 years. So the first 2 years, man, they had a really, really deep team. Like even the 2 or 3 guys that came off the bench, like they were just ready to go, ready to rock. And we were kind of hit or miss that first year in terms of like, how it really just depended on how we started off the game. And I just remember that first playoff game, the atmosphere was great. It was awesome. And they came out just ready to go. And we were at Hudson. So that helped them. And we just
great environment too, right? That's a fun place to go and play right there.
It is. No, it is, man. It's awesome.
So you mentioned being there for 2 years. Where'd you go after that?
So after that, I actually had my son, and we moved back down to Portland. I wanted to get an apartment down here. I didn't want to live up in Waterville. I mean, listen, Waterville's a nice little town, but I wanted to go back to Portland, and I was gonna go try to play for USM at the time. But personal stuff got in the way. Decided to work instead. And saved up some money. And that's kind of where I started thinking, it kind of put my hat on and started thinking, well, basketball doesn't last forever. I said, well, what if basketball stopped today? What am I going to do? And I realized, I love the sport. This has been everything to me for forever, ever since I could pick up a basketball. So I really just kind of sat in on learning how to coach and learning how to train and kind of here I am.
Yes, yeah, so you mentioned 2 things. You mentioned coaching and training. And so around the time you finished up at Thomas, it would have been like 2013, 14.
Yep. Yeah, that's when I finished playing. Yeah.
And like right now, I think we're starting to see a lot. The training thing here in Maine is becoming a lot more common than it was back then. Like I think the first thing I ever noticed, or the first training thing I think I ever saw from Maine was like when Ben Tier was putting out DVDs and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is the first I've seen of anyone here in Maine doing that. So coaching and training, I'm guessing at the time you're probably thinking more coaching, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly how it started. I was actually lucky enough to coach with the same coaching staff at Portland High that I played for. So I got to coach with Coach Russo and Coach Giordano down in Portland. And that was cool because I got to see a different side of how they prepare for things. And I also got to coach with the girls team with Coach Corcoran when he first took over at Portland as well. So I got experience on both sides of the varsity, girls and boys.
Do you get a state championship? Were you there? Were you part of any of those state championship teams?
Nah, they should have, man. The boys should have won the first year I was there with them. But I believe it was Gorham. Had the two brothers there who were just, man, they went off. They both had like 25 apiece. And you know, if you do that in high school basketball, you're sitting pretty.
So you mentioned being on the coaching staff and just seeing the game from a different perspective. How'd that help translate to you getting into training? Because it's one thing to be a trainer and having the skills and being like, all right, do this. But what did coaching give you in terms of knowledge that you applied towards training, just stuff you can kind of show the kids from that coaching perspective?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing for me was I've always been like a film junkie. Like I love being detailed, super detail oriented. So like, that's what I hung my hat on when I was coaching was, you know, I was the one breaking down film and scouting for the other teams and things like that. But the biggest thing that frustrated me was, you know, watching these kids move and watching how they actually played as individuals within the team aspect. And you just don't have enough time as a coach to sit there and actually work that stuff out. You know, you just assume and you hope that these kids prepare throughout the off season for that stuff. And so as I realized, you know, how detail oriented I was and how I wanted to be, I just wanted to dive deeper. So the X's and O's were great. And, you know, I had a super fun time coaching. It was great. It was an awesome experience. But man, I just, you know, it brought me back to me as an individual. Like I said, when I was in high school, I wasn't very good, but I was in the gym 8 hours a day, literally working on my craft because I knew I wasn't good and I needed to be better. So I just wanted to bring some of that to these, you know, to some of these kids. And then I just decided to do this full time, quit my 9 to 5 and jumped right in.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, how'd you actually make the jump? Like, what was that like? And like, how'd you line up clients to begin with? Because I mean, you got, you know, it's one thing to say I'm gonna be a trainer, but then you actually got to go get clients, have people that want to work with you. So,
Yeah,
how did that all come about? How'd you actually jump into it?
it was really just, you know, I used to work at the YMCA here in Portland, and the same gym I trained in throughout high school, and I ended up actually working there. And you know, before and after work, I just go up to the gym and work out. And a couple of the kids that I knew from around the area would jump in my workouts with me and things like that. And I was basically just giving out workouts for free. And I realized, you know, I could be doing this part time. And so I did that for a couple of years and built some clientele and went to AAU games and some practices and linked up with some programs. And that's kind of how I got my start with clientele is really just people watching me train and being interested in what I'm doing and hitting me up that way. And then once I realized, you know, what I'm doing actually works, you know, once I saw the progress with the clients and once I saw the outreach and the support from me and myself, then I was just ready to go. And then my last year working at the YMCA, I used the money that I saved up there to fly out to Michigan and go train with Michael Lancaster, who's the owner of I'm Possible Training. And I stayed with him for a week and picked his brain, and we dissected a lot of stuff, and I learned a ton of stuff up there from him, and I brought it all back here.
Yeah. So then, and the other part I'm curious about too is, you know, as a basketball player, you learn things, you get better. As a coach, you learn things, you kind of adapt and get better. As a trainer, like how long did it take you for you to find your groove? Because I mean, at first everything's probably brand new and you're just trying things to see if it works. But eventually, I'm guessing you kind of figured out what works, what doesn't, best approaches to take, maybe some things to stay away from. So like, how long did it take you to kind of figure that part of it out?
I think really when I obviously, you know, everybody has their own style. You know, like you mentioned Ben earlier. Like I know Ben. You know, we have a pretty good relationship, and people seem to lump us together. But him and I both know that the things that we do are different, and not in a good or bad way. Just, you know, just different. And everybody has their own style, just like any coaches or any players. Though. But for me, when I went to go see Micah, where he's strictly skill enhancement, like all he does is focus on just the skills. He doesn't care who you are, what position you are, where you're at in your ability level. He's going to train everybody the same way. And something about that, really struck me, because basketball is really making this revolutionary turn where it's almost positionless. It's very, very close to being a positionless sport. And I feel like Maine is one of the last, one of the last cultures to really back that wagon. 5, 10 kids should not be, taught post moves for their whole life. Anywhere else in the country, they'd be a point guard.
Right.
And so you wonder why these kids aren't getting looks and they're not getting the exposure. It's because they've never been put through the training to be a positionless player, to score at all 3 levels, to handle and pass and play defense and do everything. And then let them decide, well, I'm best as a shooter. I'm going to be a shooting guard. I'm best at this. Let them decide what kind of player they want to be and the role they want to cut out for themselves. So I took that and some of the things that I've learned throughout my coaching and my personal experience, and put that together. And now I have my own style and my own system. And man, I've loved the progress that I've seen. I mean, you had Parker on here not too long ago, and his progress has been, incredible. And now I'm starting to work with guys like, Dominic Campbell has come to me. We just started working out this month. I got Will Labor, who's coming to work out with me. I'm sponsoring him, so we're going to be working out through the whole summer. And I've got a ton of college guys and high school girls and boys too. So it's coming full circle, and it's definitely nice to put my own stamp on things.
So you mentioned these different guys you got coming through and your approach. So it's a little bit different. Obviously, a guy like Dom Campbell versus someone who's just starting off. They're going to be at different points, different levels skill wise. So what's your approach? You take a guy like Dom when you say, okay, these are your weaknesses, we're going to work on this, or is it, you're really good at this, let's make it a little bit better, or what's your approach?
No, so his is, I don't touch his strengths. I am not here to double down on your strengths, because quite honestly, you can do that stuff in your own time. You don't need me to teach you how to do something better than you already do it. Like if you do it at a really good rate, if you shoot the rock at a really good rate, like with Parker, for example, he is a shooter. So we didn't shoot at all. You can go get shots up whenever you want to. We're going to work on everything but that so that we can round you out as a player. And he's the type of person too, where I knew he'd get in the gym and he would actually put his own shots up. Dom is the same way. I know that he puts in his own work. He's got strength and conditioning coaches. He gets his shots up. He works with his coaches, and then he comes to me and we work on his footwork. We work on his driving angles. We work on his ball handling. We work on his offhand. We work on pickups and dribble step timing. And we're really working on the finer details to make him, a wing player. How can he, catch, fake, get to the rim, all this stuff without just being a pick and roll or a post up guy. So, and with the offers that he's got coming in, he's obviously got a ton of interest. And if he can really round himself out as a player and show that, he's got skills with the ball in his hands as well, I think, the sky's the limit for that kid.
Seems like every week there's another offer or two that come through every week right now.
Just 2 or 3.
Yeah. Where was I going to go? I had another question off that. Oh yeah. So you mentioned you don't touch strengths, right? They can work on that stuff on their own. Let me ask you this. How many of you skills guys are working on these people's defense? How much time do you spend on defense, or are we just working on offense?
So if I could be quite frank with you, man, everything is, I should say probably about 90% of what I do is on ball stuff. So whether that's ball handling or footwork, or, what I call brain training, which is just working on coordination and actually building like a neural network for you to actually be a more coordinated person. That's mostly what I do. But we always spend the last 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes doing some sort of competitive drill, whether that's one-on-one or shooting competitions or something like that. So when we do ones, and I have the other players in the session too, that's kind of where we break down defensive things. But I know from my coaching that every coach teaches defense different. So I have made that mistake as a young trainer, trying to teach defense. And, 2 months later, the kid comes to me and says, coach told me to scrap everything we worked on. So, rather than shoot myself in the foot, the coaches will teach defense. And for me, it's 85% hustle, and a mental thing too. So it's not much that I have to teach. Defense is a scheme thing. So if you can buy into whatever team you're on, you'll be fine.
So you mentioned some of the guys you've worked with and that you are going to be working with, obviously a bunch of talent. Do you have like that? You have like that one guy? So it's a two-part question. Do you have like that, maybe that one person that you started off with at a young age and then you've seen him just develop into something great? Like I'm guessing Parker's one of those guys. So that's part one. Like, do you have that one that you've seen that you've nurtured and seen grown and just is next level at this point? And two, I'm guessing, you can work with as many kids as you want, but if you want to build, if you have some kids that you can say like, hey, like this kid is who I work with this kid, it kind of gives you more credibility. Like who was that first guy that kind of gave you that credibility? Like, what we do here is legit. Like you will get results if you work here. Do you have one of those guys as well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I try not to put too much emphasis on that stuff. I mean, I kind of let my work speak for itself, and I'll let everybody else kind of handle that in terms of like my players will reach out and speak on my behalf sometimes. But I kind of don't really hang my hat on that because I think it's hard and easy at the same time to gauge people's progression. Like sometimes you can really see it, sometimes you can't really see it, but you know that it's there. But I would say, Parker's definitely one of those guys. Parker, came in really catch and shoot, one dribble pull up kind of guy. And obviously, you can't score 40 points a game just doing that. So, we worked on quite a bit of stuff. I would say the biggest one that I got right now, and man, I feel bad cause I haven't shouted out any of my girls either, but the biggest improvement that I've seen is, from my young guy, Nafis Paget, who plays at South Portland. I got with him when he was in maybe like 6th grade. And I could tell he was going to be long, he's going to be athletic, and he had some skill. He was kind of soft, kind of timid with the way that he played. And but he had the skill and he had the potential there. And man, we have put in a ton of work over these last like 3 years. I mean, he's one of the only kids still, waking up at 6 o'clock to go train with me. And during the season, after the season, no matter what, and he's putting the time in, and he's getting big now. He's like 6'2" with like a 6'5" wingspan, and his skills are starting to come together. So man, I think he's going to be really scary. He might be going to prep. He might be reclassing and going to prep. But if not, then South Portland's definitely got a good one. That's for sure.
It's got to be exciting too when you're working with someone and you see him progress, and then you just start to see him like physically just start to develop. You're like, okay, like we might have something here if this kid keeps growing like he is, right?
No, that's exactly right, man.
One more question about Parker. How'd you guys link up? Because he's up there in Forest Hills, up there in Jackman, in Portland. Like that's not too close. So how'd you guys even link up to begin with?
Yeah, let's see, because this was a while ago, man. I think it was through, it might have been through Nolan Sanborn, who played at Chevrolet, who was one of my day one kids. He was one of the first guys that we really, really worked out quite a bit. I'm pretty sure he played AAU with Parker, growing up. And I think somehow word got passed along that they were working out, and Parker's dad reached out to me. And I'm like, where are you from? Where are you talking about? Where the heck, where is Forest Hills? Like, what are you talking about right now?
Yep.
Yeah, man, I love them, that whole family, him, Mason, and both of his parents, and the little brother too. I love all of them, man. They're super good people, and their work speaks for itself. I mean, they drive 3 hours down to do a 2-hour workout to drive 3 hours back, which is incredible, just to, a testament to the dedication that they put to this craft.
How many trips have you taken to Jackman?
None. I say every summer. Every summer I haven't gone, but you know what? This is the year. I actually just talked to him last weekend, and I think they're going to try to put me up this summer if everything is cool, and everything works out that way. I think I'm definitely going to take a trip up there.
Definitely. So I got a couple more questions I want to ask you here. Anyone who follows you on social media, we see the videos and stuff like that. this footwork mat that you use, the little
Yeah.
the little mat. Is this one of your creations, or where does this thing come from? Because I don't see anybody else working with it. I think you were the first person I've seen to utilize
Yep.
that. So, where does this come from, and how effective is it?
Yeah. So it's another one of Micah's creations. That's one of my favorite thing about Michael Lancaster is he's definitely an innovator. Nobody thinks about the game the way that he does, which I appreciate. Just whether you like it or not, I just love the innovation of it, and obviously he cares about it, and he's always trying to get better. So yeah, the footwork mat actually it's his idea, and the reason why I use it is really just a lot of the tools that I use are visual representations. A lot of people will say, well, there's no cones, there's no mats, there's none of these things in a game. But I would say the same thing to anybody who uses a chair or anybody who uses two basketballs. So I mean that's kind of my being the devil's advocate in terms of that conversation. But I have found profound success in some of the clients because I trained for a long time without it. Uh, and man, when it first came out, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it because I just figured it would help. I didn't really know, but then putting it in and putting the work in and seeing some of these kids and how they react, it just gives a really good visual representation of let's focus and let's actually take a look and see what you're doing, and then we can go to the film and we can break it down and see where your placement is and the timing, and we can this is where I talk about being detail oriented. And then we always take this to the thing that people don't see is or really understand is we always take it away. I don't keep them confined to that mat. They don't live in that box. We teach the skills, we make sure that they get it, and then we do other things to apply it. So yeah, man, it has worked. It's worked wonders to the point where I've got dots all over my court now. So
So I'm guessing a lot of this stuff is trial and error. So I want you to tell me something that you came up with, or something that you thought was a good idea and wound up not being a good idea, not really being too effective, and something else that you thought might be a good idea and wound up being a really good idea, and something you still use today.
In terms of like training and methods,
Yeah, like training techniques or drills or something like that.
Man, I don't think that there's anything that I've done or come up with that hasn't worked. I think really the biggest thing is, how people feel about it. So like, sometimes I'll have people jumping over boxes or jumping over mats, and people are looking at me like, yo, I can't jump that high. Like, I'm not trying to bust myself trying to do this. Really, it's just more of the challenge of things. There hasn't really been anything that doesn't work because there's always little attributes inside of every method that I come up with. And I don't just put things together at random. I study the game. I don't do this by chance. So the things I come up with, everything has a purpose. So I can't really say, not to dodge the question, but I can't really say that nothing works.
Have you ever, or do you ever struggle with maybe someone who wants to come work with you who just isn't as serious or motivated as maybe you are, like someone who comes in and doesn't want to stay there for the full session or wants to cancel or just doesn't want to attack it as hard as you? Like, is that something you have to battle with and kind of balance, like maybe your expectations versus what they're really going to be like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is no, honestly, people who actually come in and work with me. You spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a session with me, you understand that I know what I'm talking about, and that I'm here for you. I'm a asset to help you in your game. I think the hardest thing is the perception of people who don't know what I do. So maybe if their kids aren't 100% committed to basketball, and they see some of the crazy stuff that I'm doing on Instagram, they're like, okay, well, that's not for me. My kid, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's the biggest thing. And maybe I have to do a better job too, because on social media, obviously the big thing is promoting yourself and your best players and things like that, which I try to do a fair share of spreading the love and showing support to everybody that comes through and works with me. But yeah, I mean, if they come in the gym and they see me and they see how I work, and they see how detailed I am. It's hard to say no to that, to somebody who's dedicated and who will look at you from a finer scope, under a microscope, and really dissect what you do.
So you've already mentioned a lot of the kids that you work with and kids you've been working with and will be
Yeah.
working with. If you could, if you want to, give me some names for people to look out for that maybe were quiet last year, the year before, but they're ready to blow up, ready to make some noise. We got next Wednesdays on the Instagram page, trying to highlight those kids who are ready to blow. Give me some names that we can look out for, people you think that are ready to take that step.
Well, I'll say the first two only because I didn't get to say anything about them earlier is Emily Abbott, who was a freshman at Cheverus this year. She didn't get much time, but I think just the COVID season, I think a lot of the teams were really trying to get the juniors and the seniors, their minutes and their time. And they actually had a pretty good team, the Cheverus girls. They did a pretty good job this year. But Emily Abbott, yeah, I think she's going to be really, really good. She'll be a sophomore next year. I'd be surprised if she didn't start. And obviously she's got a full 3 years to show what she can do at a varsity level. So I'm super excited about it because I know what she can do. We've worked out quite a bit. The other one would be Sophia Ippolito at Greeley. She's on that Maine attraction team with all those girls. I mean, they got
stacked.
Yeah, that team is crazy, and she's a sophomore, so she's young for that group, and she's playing with them, and obviously playing behind Camille and them at Greeley. They've had such a good team for such a long time. Her being a sophomore, she's still got 2 more years to show what she can do. So I'm really, really excited for her too.
Oh, 2 great names right there. You mentioned earlier that you love to watch tape, like it's one of your favorite things to do, and you got a chance to break down a ton of it this past year, just as many games that were streamed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Give me somebody who you just love to watch tape on, someone that there's just something about the way they play, they attack the game, like going through all these hours and hours of games tape. Who's one person that you love to just break down and really impressed by? That's my first question. Second question is, while watching all these tapes, is there somebody who you just happen to see a lot of that you don't work with? Where you're like, wow, like that'd be a fun person to work with from watching tape.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of people that come to mind on both aspects. I hate to keep talking about it, but Parker's film was awesome this year. I mean, obviously dropping 40 a game and his tape was awesome. Being triple teamed and still going out and getting business done was awesome to see because we talked about it during the summer. I feel like we manifested that. We talked about getting to 2,000 even in a condensed season, and we just made it happen. So that was big. Luke Gabloff, I love watching his film just because he's a smart player. He's from Greeley. He'll be going to SMCC this upcoming year, and I mean, he'd draw 100 charges a game if you wanted him to. He's catch and shoot. He'll play off the dribble. He's a good playmaker, super good leader. So I love watching him play. He definitely plays with the right type of intensity, and that's always good to see. In terms of players who I see who I'd like to work with, man, I it's tough because I like I said, I try not to push out too much and reach out too much. I don't like to ask people to work out with me, but person.
Maybe I can rephrase it. Instead of someone to work with, just someone who you like.
No, it's okay. I mean, either way, Payton Jones, man, I always felt like, the type of stuff that I do would really, really help because, I mean, he's just a phenomenal athlete, a phenomenal player. And it looks like he does things so effortlessly and naturally that I feel like if we were able to bring some of the intention and some of the purpose behind it, the way that he moves and the way that he attacks would be, man, incredible. I've talked about that for a while with a couple of the guys that I work with, just because, all the kids around here are friends and they all know each other and watch each other play. So that's somebody who comes up a lot in our conversations. I'd also say Jalen from South Portland. Yeah, I mean, he's super good too. Like, man, he's really good, even at his young age. But you could just see, feels like he's got all the experience already. Like he just looks comfortable. which I love. So yeah, he's definitely another player that I'd love to get into.
South Portland's going to be good next year.
And they got a good team, and they got JP down there too. He's another guy who I'm like, he's a big, and that's one of my things is I like getting the bigs in the gym with me, because nobody else lets them work on guard stuff. Nobody lets them work on footwork and ball handling and pickups and step backs and all this. Like, they don't get to work on that stuff with other people. So, yeah, that definitely going to be a good team for sure.
So we mentioned Ben Tier earlier, who's another trainer doing big things here in Maine. You're down there in the Portland area. I guess there's some other people as well. I could think of a couple off the top of my head.
Yep.
You guys all get along for the most part. I mean, I'm guessing you guys got to be competitive. You want to get the best talent that you can. Although you guys would probably just want to work with anybody who wants to work with you, right? At the same time, but for the most part, do you guys all get along? Do you guys kind of share knowledge, share wealth, or what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can really only speak for myself. I'm kind of unattached in that way. I want everybody to win. I don't really care. I understand it's a market, and I understand it's competitive. I'm competitive by nature, just being a basketball player. Right. I get it, and I know that it's a business too, but I definitely think that there's enough room for everybody to eat. I think one of the biggest things that comes up is like, oh, yo, I saw somebody who you are working with is working with Ben, or they're working with Christina now, or they're working with so and so, and my biggest thing is like, okay, like that's cool with me. It doesn't really bother me, because it also doesn't mean that they're done with me, and everybody, I mentioned this at the beginning, everybody has their own style. Everybody has their own stance. Right. And so the best way that I can put it is like, if you only had one book in your library, you're limited to the knowledge that you have. So I actually encourage people to go try out other trainers. I might be one of the only people to say that, honestly. I don't mind it at all. I don't have any insecurities about what I do. I feel like what I do is different than what anybody else does here. So, and there's people who graduate from what I do. There's people who have worked with me for a number of years and then end up stopping and doing something else. And that's entirely up to them. No grudges here. But I think for the most part, we have a pretty good relationship across the board, with the trainers that are around here. At least me, like I said, I do. I don't hold anything against anybody. I think we're all just trying to do our part to elevate the culture here.
Absolutely. And it's getting there. It's getting better and better, I think, every year, every passing year.
Yep.
And you got some things coming up. So you've actually had an event that was supposed to go down this week that we talked about before we started recording that you had to postpone. But
yeah, so I'll probably do that again.
Yeah. So you do the individual thing, but you're also doing these classes, right, as well. So what are some things you've done and some things that people can look forward to coming up here once things get back to normal or start getting back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest thing, is trying not to force things and still trying to be patient. The biggest thing is AAU is in full swing. So that's, people with this condensed season and the weird skipped practices and this and that, everybody's just looking forward to getting the games and playing again. But for me, in my new facility down in Saco, we're going to be putting together what I call Skill Lab, which is, group sessions that we're going to be doing weekly. That's going to go throughout the whole year. So that's just going to be a part of programming that I start to implement as we gear up for the summer here. Yeah, you mentioned the footwork clinic. So I'm gonna have a few different clinics throughout the year. I'm gonna have a footwork clinic, a finishing clinic, and then this June, probably mid to late June, I'm working on a big event. I'm trying to get a 3-on-3 event at the gym there and do it right. Get the the DJ, the food truck, and get everybody in there. Thinking about trying to do a 3-tier thing. So we have a middle school group, a high school group, and a post grad, so we can have all the old heads come through if they want to as well. And I think it's going to make for a really, really fun weekend and just bring some of that culture back. So that's really where my focus is right now, is trying to plan for that event and bring some of the youth and some of the players, high school, college, like I said, post grad, and just have a super fun weekend of being super competitive and bringing that back, because it's something that I used to do when I was a kid. I would get into any 3-on-3 tournament that I saw. We had one down at Deering Oaks that I would go into every year. And we just don't see stuff like that anymore. So now that I have my own space, I figured, why not try and give it a shot? And there'll be some prizes, obviously, some good prizes for the winners of those tournaments too. So
Whenever it happens, let me know, because I might throw a team in there. I might sponsor a team and just go find the best three-on-three team possible and field them and throw them in there.
Do it, man. No, I mean, I know I'm going to play. I know I'm going to put a team together and I'm going to jump in there. So I'm just trying to encourage everybody.
Absolutely. I got one more question before we get up out of here. So I want you to be honest with me. You said you mentioned you quit your full-time job and jumped into this full-time. Right now, like, is it going better than you had anticipated? Because whenever you first jumped into it was kind of like a new thing here in Maine. But now going on 5-6 years with it, is it better than what you expected, or you still got goals and you're still pushing and you want to take it further?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes a little both ways. I mean, I'm never satisfied. I'm never comfortable, no matter how successful or unsuccessful it may seem that I'm doing. I'm just I'm always thinking about trying to be better. It just kind of brings that approach to my training too, is no matter how good of a player comes through my gym. I mean, first player I worked out with was Sherwood Brown, who was on that Florida Gulf Coast team way back when they went all the way to the Elite Eight or whatever it was. He was the first person I worked out with. And so it was great to just see, okay, this guy's got strengths. Let's pick apart his weaknesses. And that's kind of what I do with myself, is I'm always just looking at what I can do better. I feel like I've, for lack of a better word, I feel like I've mastered the personal side of things. And so now it's really just about scaling and getting these groups in, because I have a lot of value there too that I've been planning for over a year. So it's just about getting that out there. And then, I mean, I think it's gone better than I expected. Just in terms of, I mean, even with COVID,
Right. Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine today, and, it's always nice to get messages from people who support me and what I'm doing. And he said, the gym's going to be a big success. And what people don't realize is that you built this through COVID. And like, that kind of spoke to me, like starting a brand new business in the middle of a pandemic. It's probably one of the stupidest things anybody could do. But, but, I think long-term, I think it's going to be, a big thing. And I think that it's exactly what I wanted to do.
For anybody that's interested in reaching out, wanting to work with you, go ahead and plug the social media. Where can people reach out to you? How can they reach out to you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, no, I mean, most of the people reach out to me on Instagram. So, you can go ahead and follow me at DGB Ball Training. And I always get back to you. I'm on there all the time, checking out videos and stuff like that. So that's the easiest way to reach out to me. But I got the website up too. All the scheduling and all the booking can be done through that as well. And that's at dgbasketball.com. So
there we go. Did we miss anything? Is there anything else you want to plug? Is there anything else going on that we forgot to touch base on? Anything you want to get out there before we get up out of here?
Man, no, I'm good. I really appreciate you having me on, and I got to shout out some of my youngins, which I'm appreciative for. And let's just keep in touch, and let's see if we can push the word about this 3-on-3, because I'd like to get people from all over the state to come down and do this, a nice little summer event. So.
Is there anybody else that you missed that you got to shout out real quick? Is there anybody else that needs love, or did you get the ones that needed it?
Oh, you know what, man? I could go on for days. But all my people know I love them, and we're at it. We're working.
There we go. Dylan Goodman, everyone, on Big Time Hoops, the podcast. Thank you for coming through. And anything he's got going on, we're going to plug it. We're going to push it on the social media channels and share that as well. So all those events go off as big as possible. So shout out to Dylan for coming through. It's going to do it for this week's episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. We'll see you next week with another big time episode of Big Time Hoops. See ya.